Hello everyone, welcome to this new video. My name is Kaustubh from Inside Stat, and finally we are going to talk about DAX, which is one of the most important components of Power BI. So what is DAX? DAX is data analysis expressions. So it is a formula language that is not only used in Power BI, it's also used in Excel and other analysis services. And why do we use DAX? So we use DAX to create custom calculations. So it's a front-end language that helps us, or that empowers us to play or to use these different variables, attributes that we have in our data sets, and how we can combine them, or how we can slice or dice them and come up with some new calculations or with new features altogether. So DAX is very powerful in order to create custom calculations that would help us analyze data across related tables and respond to filter context. Now, what is filter context? We will talk about it. Now, how do we apply DAX? In the upcoming videos, we'll talk about the different DAX functions, but in today's video, let's understand how are we going to apply DAX. Now, DAX can be applied in two ways. One is where we can come up with calculated columns. The second is where we can apply DAX as measures. Now, let's understand the difference between the two. Okay, so calculated columns are nothing but coming up with new columns using some logic. For example, let's say the business comes up with a logic, and the logic says any person who has children, where the total children count here, if you see here, the total children count is greater than 0, we want to come up with a new column called as are they parents or not. So whoever has children, we'll call them parents. Whoever do not have children, the children count is 0, we'll call them not parents. So in order to apply this, so what do? How do you come up with a new column? We'll come up with a new column here. We right click here and we can click on new column. This is one way. Another way is if you click anywhere on this table, you will see this option here, new column. You can do that as well. Or else we can go to the table here, the table name here, right click on it, and we can click on new column. So there are different ways of bringing out the same thing. Okay, so let's click on new column. This brings out the new column for us. Now we have to name this column. We have to name the DAX. So I say we'll call it is parent. And what is the logic behind this? So we'll use an if clause. Again, don't worry, we will be discussing them in detail. So this if clause, when I put on the open parenthesis, in any DAX function, you will see the syntax being given to us. It prompts us. It tells us how to proceed. Now, in this case, it tells us there has to be some logical test. So in this case, the logical test is I first have to look at if total children, the customer lookup total children here, is it greater than 0? And then I put a comma here. That is our logical test. If it is greater than 0, what is the result if this expression here, this expression gives us a true? If it is greater than 0, what do? So we say if it is greater than 0, then is parent will say yes, there is a parent. Again, a comma. The moment I put a comma, it highlights result if false. What happens if this expression gives us false? It turns out to be false. So I'd say no, they're not a parent. And that's it. That's all I have to do. And then I close the parenthesis here. Okay. Okay. The moment I do this, look at this. I have a new column here where we apply the if DAX function, and we have some values here, and please note the difference. Here the formula is being applied to each and every row. Each and every row is being evaluated. If the total children here, if we filter it for, let's say, 2, it should show us that the person is a parent. And if the total children is set to, let's say, 0, they're not a parent. So this logic works fine. But note how new column works. Adding a new column will work on the row context. It will evaluate each and every row. Now let's try and see how new column would work in a different context. So let's go to our sales data table. And now in the sales data table, I want to come up with a new column that would say, or where I want to calculate the total order quantity. So we have the order quantity column here, and I want to calculate the total order quantity. So if I go on new column and I say total order quantity, and all I have to do here is put a sum of order quantity from sales data table, and I close this sum function. The moment I do this, look at this. I have the same value for all the rows in the table. So this is the difference when we use a new calculated column for evaluating a logic and for coming up with some aggregation. What we did here is aggregation. So a new calculated column would not work would not work in order to aggregate values. When we are aggregating values, it will show us the same value for all the rows. Right? So it does not take in the filter context. Again, don't worry, we will talk about what is the filter context. But the thing here is calculated columns do not work well on filter context. Right? They will always evaluate on the row context which we saw here. It'll give us a row-wise calculation. Okay, so now we saw that how a new column here would not make sense in our case or in our situation, because we don't want the same value to be repeated again. So what we do is we will go ahead and delete this new column. So it gets deleted from here as well. So now let's try and add a measure, and let's see how does it differ. So how do you add a measure? Again, it's the same thing. If you select the table, you will see a new measure option here. If you go here, right click here, you will see a new measure option here. So let's click on new measure. Let's call this new measure now. Again, the total order quantity, and I say it's a sum of the order quantity. It's not total, yes. And we click on enter. Look at this. Now we have a new attribute here, that is total order quantity, and we do not have a new column here because we are creating a measure. So now when I go back to my report view, and let's say I want to bring in a new matrix here, and to this matrix values I bring in the total order quantity. We have the value here, and now if I want to use some filter here, for example, let's say I want to look at these total orders by product key. Look at this. This is the same table which we get from here. So here we had the product name earlier, but look at this now. we have the product key, and we have the sales or the total order quantity by the product key, right? So this is the difference. This is the primary difference between a calculated column and between creating a measure, right? So we'll talk about these differences more. We'll also talk about why creating a measure, just like how we created here the total order quantity, is not a very good practice. We'll also talk about it, but in this video all I wanted to show was how to create DAX measures using a calculated column or using a measure. So that's all I had for today. If you have liked this video, please subscribe and share. It gives me motivation. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.